Hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I'm Susan, your hostess. We're in my kitchen again with more tomatoes. What am I going to do with these tomatoes today? I'm thinking I'm going to turn them into enchilada sauce for the pantry shelf for long-term storage. Doesn't that sound yummy delicious? These are 20 pounds of tomatoes that we picked up from the Amish community. My tomatoes on the vine are still green, but look at that. Isn't that a beautiful tomato? It's got a little bruising on it, but that's okay. It's all going to cook up and it'll be delicious. Let's get to canning. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to get the skins off of them, and I'm going to get them crushed and into my big stock pot so we can start making yummy, yummy enchilada sauce. Alrighty, y'all, I have been allowing my tomatoes to cook down and have them on a low temp just to simmer. I don't want them burning on the bottom. I've been stirring them a few times here and there, and we're getting ready to add all of our ingredients. So it's 20 pounds of tomatoes that have been skinned, cored, and cut up, and you can either crush them in a food processor or you can cook them down and crush them like I did. The recipe calls for 1 large onion chopped, which would equal about 3 cups of onion. Get the onion out of our bowl. I don't want to miss out on any of that good flavor going in here. Y'all can see I've got all that onion in there. Let's get that in there. The recipe calls for 1 head of garlic chopped or minced. So I looked online. A clove of garlic is 1 teaspoon. Usually there's about 6 cloves in a head of garlic. Some garlic has more than that, but I have minced my garlic, and I'm going to get that in there as well. The recipe calls for 5 tablespoons of chili powder. So that's 5 tablespoons. And 2.5 tablespoons of sea salt or canning salt. You can also chop up some hot peppers if you want a little heat, a little more heat in this sauce. I think this is going to be just fine like it is. We're going to allow this to cook, and I will tell you the cooking times and everything on it. It smells amazing, y'all. It already smells like enchilada sauce. Alright, yesterday I got all my tomatoes prepped and ready to go and had them in the refrigerator overnight. This morning, early this morning, I put this on. So this has been cooking about 4 to 5 hours already. And it has reduced down probably about 3 inches. It's going to reduce down just a little bit more. The recipe I found was on Pinterest. However, when I went to save it, my phone went down, so I couldn't save it, and it didn't show where I had found it at. So I can't tell you where it came from. Sorry, folks. It is enchilada sauce. Prep time is 30 minutes. Cook time says 1 hour, but it's been 5 hours cooking down those tomatoes. You will need 20 pounds of tomatoes pureed, 1 large onion chopped, which equals 3 cups of chopped onion, 1 head of garlic pulled and chopped, and that would be 1 teaspoon per clove, and I put 6 teaspoons into my enchilada sauce. 5 tablespoons of chili powder, 2.5 tablespoons of sea salt or canning salt. Peppers are optional. You will bring your tomatoes to a boil, stir frequently, reduce heat, and simmer for 30 minutes. Do not cover your pot. Allow it to reduce and remove it from heat. Allow it to cool for a few minutes before you run it through a food mill or a blender If you're trying to get rid of all the seeds, then you want to put it through a food mill. Return it to the pot, bring it to a boil, and simmer and reduce to the consistency that you want. You will add in your chili powder and your salt and your other ingredients. 1-inch headspace, pint jars, 10 pounds of pressure for 20 minutes for my altitude. Adjust it for your altitude. Or you can water bath this by adding 1 tablespoon of bottled lemon juice to each jar, and then water bath for 35 minutes. I'm going to do the pressure canner. And I decided I'm not going to chop up some peppers. And I'm making noise, y'all. I'm dropping stuff. I have cowboy candy on the shelf, and you can see we leave the seeds in. My husband and his friends at work love this stuff, and you can tell it's hot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop a tablespoon of this in there, and I'm going to taste it after I drop it in, see if it needs more. If it needs more, I will add, and it's a heaping tablespoon, so about 2 tablespoons would be what this is. So I'm just going to drop that in my pot. We're going to give it a stir, and then I'm going to give it a little taste. We like things hot here. If you don't like it hot, don't add the pepper. But it does smell just like enchilada sauce. Good smell. Basic recipe. Here we go. I'm going in, y'all. I think that's perfect. I don't need any more spice to that. If I put too much, it will be too hot for some people. So this was cowboy candy from 2021, y'all. Going in the refrigerator. I chopped up my onions. I measured out 3 cups. Approximately 3 cups. Came as close to it as I possibly could. And put that in there as well. And then I had already chopped up some garlic. And it was 2 tablespoons exactly. So it went into the pot, which is 6 teaspoons. So everything is measured and put in there according to the recipe. When you're doing a canning recipe and you're pressure canning, you want to get your vegetables in there according to the recipe. You can change up your spices a little bit. I've got my water heating in my pressure canner. We're going to get our jars ready. I'm going to allow this to reduce down just a little bit more, and then we're going to can this up, and hopefully we'll have some beautiful enchilada sauce on the shelves for later use this year or next year. All right, my jars are hot, my canner's hot. I'm going to turn this back on. My liquid is hot. I also want to say, when you're doing tomato products, you want to use a non-corrosive stainless steel pot to cook your tomatoes in. You do not want to use aluminum. So I'm just going to give this a little stir. And we're going to start tempering our jars like Mama taught me. Just a little bit of liquid in the bottom of the jars. Just to make sure those jars are the same temperature as that hot liquid going in there. This looks thick and it looks chunky. I did not run it through a food mill or a food processor. I did it in the pot. What I can do when I take it out is I can actually take it out of the jar and pulse it a few times, and it'll come together just fine. Okay. I'm going to get these jars filled up. To about 1 inch. Now, the recipe didn't say what the headspace is. I really need to go check that. So let me double check that real quick. Okay, I was correct on the headspace. So I know that jar there is a little over full, but we'll go back and we'll adjust these as we need to. I'm going to leave a little less out of that jar. And always double check your recipe when you're getting it offline. Make sure that you've got all the correct information, because sometimes the recipes can be wrong. We are human and we make mistakes. But we want to, when we're canning, we want to be as accurate as we possibly can. So I know my canner holds 9 pints. I don't have a cooking time for this for quarts, unfortunately. And it does smell delicious. I'm going to probably have 2 canners of this, just from the looks of the pot. Probably won't have a full second canner, let's put it that way. And I usually like to divide my jars up when I know I'm not going to have a full canner, to make sure I have at least 4 of the jar in there. Ball really does not like us to can with less than 4 jars in a pressure canner or a water bath canner. So just be aware of that. Sometimes the recipes don't come out exactly like they should. And I'm going to check my headspace, because I know this one is over. And I've got to take some of that liquid out of there. Let me grab a spoon. I'm just going to take some of this liquid out and put it in another jar. That way we'll know where we need to be at on our jars. Okay, that will be at the headspace, this jar right here. So just underneath that lip there. These are Arkansas glass jars that I'm using. So I'm just going to double check, and I'm right there at it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a little bit more to each one of these jars till I reach that 1-inch headspace. And I'll be back when I finish doing this. All right, you always debubble. And that's just making sure you don't have any bubbles in there. And this has got a little piece of black from the bottom of the pan. I'm going to try to get that out. Sometimes tomatoes will scorch on the bottom. Doesn't mean your product's bad. It just means you got a little scorch in there. And it's being difficult. It don't want to come out. So I'm going to get that out of there. Okay. So I'm going to double check that jar in just a moment. You want to debubble all your jars. Then you're going to double check your headspace. Okay, headspace is checked. Now I'm going to clean the rims of my jars. And I'm not ready today, y'all. I'm not ready today. So I'm going to grab a clean washcloth or rag. And I'm dipping it in vinegar. I see another little piece of that black stuff in here. Just double check, make sure everything's good. Clean your rim really well. And I have my superb canning lids. They've been soaking in some warm water, just to soften up the gasket. Now you don't have to do that step anymore. And I've got a pocket full of my bands. So the trick is 4 fingers. 1 finger on here as you drop the band. Put your band on finger tight. that way. And then I grab my little handy dandy tool, or you can grab a pot holder or something to hold your jar. And then you want to tighten it finger tight, no tighter than that. It will actually stop turning when it's finger tight. And into the canner it goes. So that's what it's looking like, folks. Doesn't that look good? We're going to get these loaded into the canner, and we're going to get our canner going. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, I've got 9 pints in my canner. I'm going to apply the lid. You check your peephole before you put your lid on. Presto recommends oiling the edge of your canner and your gasket. I've done that already. And then we're going to vent it for 10 minutes. Once that 10 minutes is up, we're going to apply our weight for our altitude. Mine is 10 pounds of pressure, so we're going to add a 10-pound weight. Then we're going to wait for it to start jiggling. Then we'll set our time for 20 minutes. Once that timer is up, we turn our burner off and walk away until that canner cools down. You'll know when it's ready because that little button on top will be flat. We'll be back in a little bit. Well, hey y'all, we had a little bit of a mess in one of our canning adventures, but we were able to salvage almost the entire jar. I'll explain that in just a moment, but we have 13 pints that are going to go on the shelf. 14, well, number 14 will be supper one day this week. But doesn't that look wonderful? Look at that. All that goodness. I love it. Y'all can see the mess back there on my lids. We're going to talk about that for just a moment. First, we're going to look at the jar of sauce that has sealed. And there it is, y'all. The final product. And I am super, super excited to have this on the pantry shelf. It's still bubbling in the jar, y'all. So this jar right here has a lot of product on the outside of it. What happened was this band was not put on tight enough. It needs to be finger tight. It can loosen in your canner. And when it was coming off pressure, guess what? That band loosened and it popped the lid off of the jar. The jar didn't break. The product is still good. Although I will have to clean my jars now really good when I wash them tomorrow. This will go in the refrigerator, or I could put it into the freezer in a bag and have it for a meal another night. It's still perfectly good. If the jar breaks and it's a clean break, you can still eat the product that's in your other jars. Not the jar that breaks, but the other jars. If the jar breaks and it is not a clean break, there's a possibility that you will have glass shards in your product and you will have to throw the whole batch out. That's just some tips for y'all. Now, if I had over tightened my band, the lid would buckle. So there's no buckling on the lid. This is the lid that was actually on there. And you can see it's been through the canner. So if the lid pops off and the product is still mostly in your jar, it's still good. You can eat it. If the jar breaks and it's a clean break, your other jars are still good and you can eat those. If the jar has a buckled lid on the top, you put your lid on too tight. 3 ways to know something about canning in this. I wanted to share that because it did happen to me. And it does happen to the most experienced canners. Now, I don't claim to be the most experienced canner, but I'm still ahead of the game, even losing about a half a cup of product here because I've got 14 pints. I thought I had counted 16. I don't know where my head's at, but I did 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 jars total and we got 13 for the shelf, 1 for a meal this week. Not a bad day's work. This is my home canning, and I have a playlist for y'all. So if you go down and below the video, you can find the playlist. I'll attach it to this video. Also, I call it my canning adventures because I am learning all the time when I'm in the kitchen canning. So fresh tomatoes, 20 pounds of fresh tomatoes, and I yielded 14 pints, give or take, of product for my shelves in a day's work. Not a bad deal. If you're new to canning and you want to learn about canning, please come back and check out my channel, and because I'm doing canning all the time. I'm hoping to incorporate more canning videos for next year and 2025 as well as we rotate through what we have in our pantry. Thank you, my friends, for watching, and may you be fully blessed.